What is going on, guys? Craig 1287 here, bringing you some Battlefield 3 gameplay. What you're going to be seeing in the background is going to be some no-share canal, conquest action, a good bit of Amtrak gameplay in this, in addition to some of the engineer gameplay. And it was a pretty fun round, and I'm sure you guys will, enjoy watching that as we get into some discussion. And the first thing that I'm going to be talking about is mostly sort of just kind of a rumor that's kind of going around. It's just somewhat of a possibility, and this is something that really hits home for me as one of my, well, actually my favorite multiplayer first-person shooter of all time. Some of this might be nostalgia, but I'm sure it still holds up fairly well because I still replay this game every now and then, about once a month, and still love it every time I get on. And that is, well, the game that I'm talking about is Battlefield 2142, which was a standalone title that was released back in 2006, and I loved it. Such an amazing shooter. The balance that was in there, the maps, the weapons, the vehicles, the setting, everything. Everything was just so really, it was a fantastic shooter. A lot of people credit Call of Duty as being like the first shooter out there that had things like weapon attachments and all these things like perks and things like that. And really that was with 2142, and it had cool perks that you could use to change your layout and things like that. And it did so many fantastic things. It was just an amazing game. And there were some rumors, and I will have a link to this article in the video description below. And they were talking with one of the DICE employees, and they were kind of saying that Battlefield 2143, I guess you could call it, is probably what it would be. Basically, that Titan mode and the futuristic setting of 2142 would be possibly making a return as the final DLC expansion pack that we would be getting for Battlefield 4, the new in-game that would be in that. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, with all the different Easter eggs that they had been doing for in-game, I mean, there's this thing floating around in one of the maps for in-game, so I mean, I definitely could see that happening, and that got me really excited again, because it's my favorite shooter. Titan mode is easily the best thing to happen to first-person shooters, online first-person shooters. It's an amazing game mode that has so much going on that, I mean, I could dedicate an entire video to talking about why Titan mode was just amazing and things like that. But just take my word for it if you haven't played 2142, and just know that Titan mode is amazing and definitely needs to happen again. Now, I'm also torn on this because as much as I want to see 2142 happen again, whether it be called 2143 or whatever, I would love for it to be its own game. And with this being a DLC, it would only probably be the 4 maps. There would probably be a few weapons that are introduced, but not the whole 30, 40 some odd weapons that you would see in a standalone Battlefield title. And so that would kind of be depressing to just see it as a DLC thing. And you're also dividing the community. Like with any shooter in game nowadays, when you come out with DLC, you've got the vanilla crowd, and then you've got the crowd that's purchased the new DLCs, the ones that have purchased Battlefield Premium, they get all the DLCs. And so you really, you're cutting the amount of people that would have access to it. Not every person that buys Battlefield 3 bought the DLCs. Not every person that is going to get Battlefield 4 is going to get the DLCs, let alone Battlefield 4 Premium and have access to all the DLCs. So it's kind of a win-lose situation for me. I really hope that it is able to come back, but I just want it to get its own standalone title. And so you guys can check out that link, read up on that, and learn why Titan mode and 2142 are just awesome. Now, moving on past that, get into the actual Battlefield 4 discussion that I want to focus on in this video, and that is Well, it touches on Levelution. Now, Levelution has been tossed out. That phrase, I mean, it's one of those hot topic kind of marketing terms that's been just constantly spouted off in every single interview and in every single video that deals with Battlefield 4. But Levelution, at first I thought Levelution was going to be just those large, massive things that happen, like the building that collapsed in Siege at Shanghai. And then we're shown for, you've got the new one, Paracel Storm, and showing the change in weather. And that was kind of part of the Levelution. And then the other part was the whole carrier, the aircraft carrier that crashes in, and or the battleship that crashes in to one of the islands. And so that one was a little different. It doesn't really, there's this physical thing that has now changed somewhat the layout of the map, but it definitely wasn't as drastic as a change as to what we saw in the Siege at Shanghai. And obviously we haven't seen what all the other maps are, but they've said in many interviews and whatnot, they've gone on record as saying that they want some form of Levelution that changes the map in every single map, and each one should be different. So clearly these two are very different. But there's an extra little bit that I'm sure most of you know and have heard, but the whole ship crashing, that's not the only change that happens in the Paracel Storm. When that thing crashes in there, it adds in an ability for the commander to use, in which if your team is the one that owns that capture point, that flag point, that battleship will have a deployable anti-air turret on it. And this turret, it is an automated turret. Alright, so this is a thing that the commander would just use at his or her disposal from their menus, and could, trigger it, it would happen, and it would shoot at air that flies by. So that's a pretty cool thing. It's not just a physical transformation, that's the word I'm looking for, to the map and to its layout, but it's also adding in this thing that has a lasting effect and an ability to the commander. So I think that'll be really interesting. I can't wait to see what other commander abilities are unique to specific maps that only happen on that map and only happen when the Levelution action happens. And then we've also seen some of the smaller scale Levelution things, like shooting out lights, or shooting out a power box that controls a series of lights in a hallway, and using that to obviously change the fight, if you've got IRMVs on or anything like that. And then we've seen the things, shutting the doors on some of the trains, shutting some of the entrances of like stores that we've seen on some of the in some of the trailers. Those are going to be fairly interesting things, and we'll just have to see how much of an actual impact they will have, or if some of these are just kind of a gimmick. But I'm sure that learning these things will probably actually have an advantage and help you out. But to most casual players, they're not going to know all the different things, and so we won't see much impact on casual players. But for those of us that learn all the ins and outs of every map and know what the different small scale Levelution things are, it'll be pretty interesting. And I wanted to touch a little bit more on that anti-air system, since that's the only one that we know of specifically so far. So let's discuss it. It is a automated turret. Alright, nobody can get into it. Now, why would they do that? Why would it not just be this AA turret that you can now go up to and use, like, stationary AA what have been in things like Battlefield 3 and Bad Company 2? And I think if we look at what they did with the stationary AA turrets in Battlefield 3, we'll see why. Because in Battlefield 3, those stationary turrets, those CRAMs and things like that, they were always just in the spawn points, and there's always something like a hill or something blocking your view, to where if you were in that turret, you could not see and therefore shoot out into the actual open field. And that was because they wanted these turrets to be used as just a anti-spawn camping mechanism, in that only you could shoot at jets and helicopters, that when you guys get pushed into your spawn, they can't get and fly in your spawn and start spawn killing you. And that is kind of what would have happened with this thing if it was a user-controlled AA turret. You would get in, and it's an actual capture point out in the battlefield rather than back in your spawns, and so it would have been abused and exploited and just used to farm kills and lock down air if it were controlled by a person. So by making it an automated thing, you know, it's not going to hunt down things and shoot things that are way off in the distance. It's not going to be 100% accurate and, you know, take them out instantly. It'll probably just be shooting them enough to scare them and get them to actually flee and get away from that area. So I think that's why they did that and made it an automated thing. This is not to say that the future examples that were shown on the maps of the Levelution things might be commander abilities. I have no clue. This is just something that hasn't been shown. So this is just kind of my speculation as to why they did that. So is this something that you guys think is pretty darn cool? And are you interested in seeing what the future might hold for these Levelution possible tools usable by the commander? Are these things that are interesting to you? So let's get a good discussion on that going and see what your guys' thoughts are. I'm very interested in to see some ideas maybe you guys might have as to what the next one will be on some of the next maps, some of these snowy mountainous maps and forest type of maps. It'd be very interesting to see. So what are your guys' thoughts? I hope you guys have enjoyed the gameplay. I hope you've enjoyed the the commentary and discussion. Have a good one. Ta-ta.